Okay, we're ready to mix Space Thunder. Now, everything is ready to go. It's been colored. We've turned down all the tracks so they're all zero. And we want to find a part of the song that's got the most elements. Often that's a climax or the heavy part or even the chorus if it's a pop song. Now I've picked this loop. You want to just create a little loop. So what you do is you just drag. Actually, I'll do it here. No, that'll do. There's some parts here that are not in that loop, but it's fine for the drums. What we want to do is get that section, open up our mixer, press play on the loop, and let it continually play. And we want to start adjusting the faders. Now I'd always start with the kick. Now remember what I said in the previous video, we want to keep the master at all times below -10, -15, give enough headroom for mastering because later the whole track will be brought up in volume. This is good practice, and often elements like the kick and the bass will push that up. So we're trying to balance everything, and we're trying to keep it below on the master. Now, I mean, it's easier to turn them sort of all up together at the same, and then just adjust to your taste. Everything might sound a little bit tinny right now. Just remember that we've got the stereo. See how better that sounds. Now Dawn has got some effects on these drums that it probably should send without the effects. It's a good habit, but it doesn't affect things too much as Dawn mixed the song himself. But I can hear reverbs and stuff, and I haven't added any of my own. And that will happen sometimes if you're working with an artist or you're mixing somebody else's song. What's good practice is send the kick as flat as possible, no reverb, no effects, no distortion, and so you can add. It gives you room to add all those effects after. Now we want the kick and the snare to be balanced. Again, we're just gain staging, which is just balancing the sounds. We will go into the EQ and the compression and stuff in a bit, where we actually shape the sounds to make sure that there's no frequencies that are clashing. I think that sounds balanced enough. We're peaking here at -7, and we haven't even got any of the sort of heavier elements in, so I'm going to select them all and bring everything down. Now, what that does is keeps everything as you've just mixed it, but it just brings the entire volume down by a few decibels. If you ever get further into a mix and notice that you've got no headroom, you can select all the tracks and bring them all down, and that's a good habit. Always try to leave as much headroom. It's such a common thing that people make a mistake over. All right, so we've got our drums. I would go with the bass next. Now I'm going to just have a look at the audio to make sure, because he's got two basses and sometimes they're very likely to clash. Okay, so he's got this bass. This seems to be the lead bass. It's very tempted to turn that up louder, but you're always trying to keep everything really tight and balanced. Better to make everything sound too quiet but balanced, and then later adjust the entire volume, you know. Let's see what this bass one is. It's not really a bass, it's more of a lead. So we turn that down. I'm going to change the color so that it's the lead, just to keep it tidy. sounds relatively balanced. Again, it does sound very quiet and timid, but that's not what we're focusing on right now. So let's find some of the leads. Let's get these leads. These leads will all be pretty balanced anyway, because Don has mixed them. But we'll start from the bottom and we'll just bring everything up. So we've got some strings. You'll find that you're tempted as soon as you start bringing one element up, you want to start bringing them all up. So I'm really trying to just keep it quite balanced. Let's see what this is. And you can mix from here too. See, that's funny. That sounds more like a bass to me. I'll keep it as a lead for now, but another thing that you should get into the habit of doing is adding a low pass. And what you're doing is you're adding an EQ. I mean, I could do it for every track really. So I'll go into the mixing window. I mean, maybe not the bass, but you add an EQ, channel EQ, and you want to click here and you want to drag probably somewhere like there. Yeah, you want to cut anything below maybe 60 hertz. So there are a lot of frequencies that are inaudible to the human ear, but sometimes can end up on stems or can end up on, on the track. And if those frequencies can't be heard by your ear, but they're still there and they're on every track, and you press it, play and play every track on top of each other, they start causing some serious issues. You can hear it masks the track, it masks the various things in the track that should be crystal clear. So a good practice that I will do on pretty much, I mean, you can go right under it, but I would put it on pretty much every track. What you do here is command, option, that's the one. You want to just option, I would leave it out of the bass for now because there will be some frequencies. Actually, we'll put it on the bass too. So you're putting this on every track so that you're cutting out those frequencies below that range. I mean, I will quite literally put it on everything. And you're probably better to do this. I've kind of forgotten. You should do this before you do any gain staging. It'll just keep everything clean. Now, there's a good chance there are no frequencies on Don's tracks, but think of it as like surgery. You're cutting out any things that can't be heard that could be causing problems. The track shouldn't sound any different when you do this, but it's preventing those frequencies from clashing if they are there. Right, let me see what this layer is. Right, this layer is not here. What I'll do is I'll move it to another part of the track. Oh, that's juicy. I think that sounds about right. Let me go in here and see what we've got left. So we've got this pad. I mean, I can't actually see. There we go. So what I've done there is command it up and down, and you can zoom in. So we've got a section with the pad. Press play and turn it up. That's another way to do it. Turn it right up top so you can hear it and bring it down. Sounds about right. Again, getting everything balanced, and then we can come back to the whole track and listen and sort of tweak things as we go. Let's see, we've got a drone. And that's a very, very low end, messy sounding effect. And that's the kind of thing that's going to cause problems. So you can see here, I would probably bring so just cutting out the sort of grit. I mean, you can bring it back in later if it adds to the sound, but basses seem to cause a lot of muddiness, so I like to keep them kind of clean. It's something else I talked about in the previous video. If you cut the bass frequencies out of a lot of layers and then let the bass itself play in that range, the song will sound brilliant. It'll sound so crystal clear. It might not make sense to cut out, I've said in the last video, if you had a piano and a bass, you might cut all the bass frequencies out of the piano so that when you solo the piano, it sounds quite tinny and like it's missing the low end. But then if you add the bass underneath, it makes the piano sound like there is no low end missing. It's quite interesting. Okay. So yeah, I think this is going to cause problems. We've got analog. Okay, let me see what this is. So that's just a little bass effect he's added on top, just probably to add some color. So that's not too intrusive. I could keep that up quite loud. Here we go, a lead. Probably something very distinctive in the song. Now this is a lead, but it's also a bass, and I was wrong earlier when I called it a lead and changed the color because it actually comes in and out. There we go, look, it comes in and out. It is the only bass, which means it should be a bass. I'm gonna put it up there. Basically, yeah, that's because it's such a distinctive part of the bass at various points in the song. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm gonna keep it as a bass. I can hear this clashing a little bit now. What have we got here? Loop that little section. It's a very distinctive synth lead, so I'm going to keep that quite high in the mix. And again, we're going to go back through the whole song and listen and basically use our ears to make sure that everything that's important in the song can be heard clearly. I think that's all the gain staging done for the leads. Now, I didn't actually do anything with this. Looks like it's just a bass effect. I haven't actually mixed this yet, so that's mixed in. That's mixed in as well. Let me just see how these basses work together. Oh, you can hear they're clashing. This is more of a standard bass. I'm going to bring that up a little bit. Sounds a bit better. I'm going to leave it for now because we can just use the EQ to make sure that they're both perfectly complementing each other later. Okay, we've got the gain staging done and everything's sounding pretty balanced. What you could do here now is turn off that gain, that mono. Now, like I said, if I've balanced everything in mono, it should sound even better whenever I've turned the stereo back on. So let me have a listen. hear the difference? That automatically gives the whole track space. Now what I want to do is keep it in mono and get everything sounding really great in mono. Often you can even forget that you've got this turned on, get the mix sounding amazing, and then turn that off at the very end, and it's beautiful. What I'm going to do is start some panning. So what you do with panning is it allows you to send instruments to the left speaker or the right speaker, and it creates that effect, like I said, like it's a band on stage and that there's a guitar player standing on the left and a synth player on the right. It also allows you to create a bit of space for some elements like these synths. They're all in the same kind of same EQ frequency range. Now if there's too many layers in the same range, they can clash, and it's your job to sort of spread that out and also to cut them so that they go well together. Cut or add frequencies, and that's what EQ is in a nutshell. You can make it brighter in that range, you can cut off the high end. You might have a synth that's slightly piercing on the high end, and you might drag it down, and another synth sitting on top, and you might drag it up for the other synth, and then the two synths sound better together. I mean, that's a really basic explanation for what EQ is, but EQ's shaping the sounds. Sometimes you're shaping them surgically to cut out frequencies that clash. Other times you're adding frequencies or shaping them so that they sound better. So like, we'll start with the panning. Now, you would never really pan the basses. You would normally keep them dead on the center here. You can double click that, press 0, and that'll bring it back to center. But with this song, I've actually noticed Dawn has written the bass here, but there's actually some parts in the middle with the same synth that are more like synths. In the earlier video, I thought this track was a synth track, so I'm going to pan this. So what I can do is I can chop out this section, actually. Chop out both these sections. Now these are bass, but there's an actual bass underneath here. Now I want these to be a bit more separated. I wouldn't pan the whole bass track. I would duplicate that, which is Command D, and I would drag this down to its own track. Now these tools here, you've got your glue, your solo, scissors, pointer. If you press the scissors, then if you hold Command, your tool turns into a scissor tool. Now you can chop away, and you can press Control Z to undo that. Now I've chopped that, I've dragged it down here, and I want this to be slightly panned just a bit to the right. Now that means that when these two basses play, there's a bit more space between them. You can hear the difference. Now when you play this one over the here, it's centered. Could drag that down. Yeah, we'll do that. Maybe I'll leave the start, because the start is the only bass, and you want the only bass in the track to be in the center. This has got enough bass here in this track to cover the fact that that's panned to the right. Now, again, this is just preference. You might even just do it randomly sometimes. These are all synths, and these are strings, so I'd keep them more to the center. But I can just go through these they're lead synths, or they're like effects, or they're things that are sort of adding color to the song. I would just start panning them. Pan that to the right. That's a pad, so I'll keep that more in the middle. It's a drone, which I would keep to the middle. This is an analog synth. I'll keep that over to the right, and I'll put that over to the right. Now let's see how that sounds. Maybe turn that up a little bit, because it's a more distinctive lead. This is very distinct. I'm going to turn that up a bit too. So See all that space that you left in the headroom? This is now where you can start bringing things up. And as soon as you start bringing these synths up, you're going to inevitably have to bring the bass and the drums up. So it's again, it's good practice to bring them up as a whole, but then bring the whole group down. Right, so I mean, that's really, really quick. I've just panned them roughly without even listening. Again, I can go back and now and tweak. The next thing you want to pan is the drums. Now you want to keep your kick in the center. I think, in my opinion, always keep the kick in the center. Your snare on a drum kit would be maybe slightly to the right or slightly to the left. So there's no harm in putting it a little bit over. But if it's just the only snare in the track, again, probably better to keep it in the center or close to the center. Hi-hats and hats. Now there's 2 sets here, so that's perfect. I would pan one to the right and one to the left, so you can hear this. Just adds a bit of space. Maybe even bring that snare back. Let's see if this crash is loud enough. Yep. Now, the pan is done. I mean, that was quick. It can be a lot more complex, and I can go back and adjust it later. But again, to some extent, you can even randomly pan things just to see what happens. Now, the next thing I would do here in the track, the song sounds pretty balanced. You know, it sounds good, but you want to make it sound a bit more powerful. It's quite a rocky, headbangy song, so I want the kick and the drums to have a bit of punch. Now I would use compression, or I would use parallel compression, which is what I've set up here, this New York drum. Just want to send the whole signal, so you're double clicking it and pressing 0. That sends the whole signal to that New York drum track, which is in here as well. You're better to keep the New York drum down on the master and send the whole signal, and then you can just bring a little bit of it in. And I'll do that with the snare as well. Now you should be able to hear the effect. New York drums, and I want to double click here and send the full signal. Now you would only really use the New York drums, in my opinion anyway, on the snare and kick. It gives the snare and kick a bit more of a bite in the mix. Now let me just press play. This is what it sounded like before. Now with this little bite, so it gives it a bit more interest, a bit more of a kick. But I might turn the actual snare down a little bit here. I might bring the kick up a little bit here. I'm starting to hear that the other elements are way louder than the drums, and rather than turn the drums up, remember we're trying to keep this headroom, I would probably turn everything else down. So what I would do to do that, because I've already mixed these faders, you don't want to adjust where they are in relation to each other, but what you might do is select everything but the drums and bring them all down by, I don't know, 3 decibels, and they're still all mixed within each other. What is this? It's an effect, a bass effect, probably. Forgot to turn that up. Okay, so let me hear how the drums and the rest of the tracks work together. Bring the bass up a bit, and what I'm going to do is also send it to the New York bass. And send it. Do you hear that little problem? hear a little click. That's something I'm going to address in a second. Now I've added this bass through the New York bass. Again, it's just a compressor. It's giving it more impact, bringing it to the front of the mix. I'm going to also have to do that for the other basses. Now, it's not a good idea to do a different amount for every bass, so that's why you've got this set up as a group. If I send all these tracks, the full amount, through the New York bass, I can then adjust that whole effect here. Now I want to select the 3 of them, sends, New York bass, double click, 0, sent the full amount, just check that they're all going through there, yeah. Now, you can see how it sounds when I bring it up. Actually, I'll get it with the drums. That's nice and balanced with the drums. Now I'm sure you're hearing that the other elements now sound too quiet. Again, this is an art. You have to bring everything down rather than turning the other things up if you've not got enough headroom. You just check the master. I'll maybe bring the bass and drums down as a whole and leave everything else. Yeah, and I need to turn these red as well. Now this is a very distinct lead. This is now where we get into the final bits of the mix. So everything's still balanced within itself, but you want to turn this up, and it's a creative choice because it's a lead. Down a little bit. Now this is almost a bass as well. What I would do here is add a stereo width effect, stereo spread. It should space it out a little bit so that it's not taking up too much. I might cut out a bit more of the low end as well. Now that should sit under the bass now, and I should be able to turn it up. So again, if you've got a bassy element, you want to make sure you cut enough of it out so that you can turn it up in volume, and then that way it won't clash over the bass. See, this is too quiet too. Because all these synths are higher in frequency, they'll not take up too much of the same amount of headroom here. So you can sort of just turn them up as well, rather than bringing everything else down at this point. You've left enough space, that's the whole point. The bass, I've got the bass and drums sounding pretty balanced, so I can start making, this is the last process really. I'm trying to make sure that these all sound okay and that you can hear them clearly. Now, again, the next step after you've got them all balanced, you go in and EQ each of them just to make them sound fit together better. I don't think there's much need for that in this song because it's such a simple, it's not a simple song, it's simple dynamically, and it's simple. The tones have been written specifically so that they don't clash together. Could add a bit of a stereo spread here too. really hear that. I'm going to turn it up a bit. Bring that right up. I might bring some of these up a bit more, yeah. I know Sarah's bread here too. I'll turn it up because you can't hear it. And bring it back down. That sounds pretty balanced to me. I mean, I'm going to listen to it again, and there's always going to be a problem. And again, then you're just working backwards. You want to get everything balanced, and then you want to work back by listening to the whole track as a whole and letting your ears, like, really listening for problems. And then you'll often find that you've forgotten about a track. It'll be something so quiet that you didn't realize it was missing, and you bring it up. I mean, that is the process. You want to go through and make sure that you actually have done that. Now, the last thing I've not really covered here. Again, I've talked about groups here. I'm not really going to send what I will do. I'll send the drum group. If you're mixing a really complex pop song with like 100 players, you might want to get really into the grouping and making sure you've got your every element mixed. This song's relatively simple. It's not, I mean, when I say simple, it's not got too many layers just going on. But what I'm going to do here I'm going to show you what you would do with something like a complicated drum kit. Instead of going out stereo out, you would route it through the bus into the drums, and then you would add effects to the drum channel as a whole. Now I've already set these up. Let's see if these will open. I've got some EQs, compressors, exciters. I'm going to close that. I'm not sure why it's not working there. Yeah, VEQ3. These are plugins I've bought, so you might not be able to get these set up in your own template, but you basically want to add stuff like EQ, saturation, compression to the whole master, and then it'll just add a bit of excitement to that whole group of drums, make them sound more like a live drum as well. It'll glue them together, as we'd like to say. Let's see here how they sound now. And again, you can now start mixing within a group and go back, because now you'll notice that these drums sound clearer than everything else. Do you hear that little click? See if I can. I'll show you how to surgically remove something with EQ. What you do is you drag this up, make it very thin, drag it up as loud as possible, and then bring it along until you hear the frequency that's making that noise. That was quite invasive. There, and then you just, oh sorry, wrong one. You cut it out. and then you make it wider. When you've got the frequency that you're looking to cut out a bit, I can't quite hear it there. You make it wider. I'm not quite hearing where that is. Do you hear that? Yeah. And then you've cut it out by dragging it the opposite way. That's what you would do for trying to EQ sounds. I can't quite cut that sound out properly, but I have removed a little bit of the frequency that was annoying my ears. As well as adding compression stuff to the group, the bus, but you might want to do that to individual tracks. I don't need to do that for this track, but compression controls the dynamics, the volume within the track, and so that it's not clashing with other tracks. And you might want to go on and compress the kick on its own, the hats, the snare. I don't think it's necessary in this track because Don's mixed it a little bit already, but I just wanted to mention it so that it's not looked over. Now we've got the track balanced. I mean, you could keep tweaking for days. It's all about personal preference and a lot of practice, and you're not going to get it right the first time. I hope that you could learn something from this mixing a synthwave song. Everything I've talked about is relevant to other genres, but it can become a lot more complicated depending on the genre. Also, if you've recorded or programmed the music in electronically or recorded with live microphones, it's a whole other art form. What I would do at this point is, honestly, remember that I've turned on the mono and the master. Turn it off, and it's beautiful. You can hear the difference. I'll put it to a busy section of the song so you can hear the difference. That's how we mixed it. And then you start tweaking again. And yeah, the last stage really, I'm going to just do a playthrough and I'm going to tweak it as I go. It's pretty balanced. It sounds a lot better. I've left enough headroom so I can master it. I will actually show you how to master the track. Actually, no, I won't. I won't show you how to master it. I'm not going to encourage people to use the likes of Ozone. You're better to get your tracks professionally mastered, in my opinion. But I do master our tracks with Ozone, and probably don't do as close, even as close to a good job as a professional. Mastering something you should always get done, especially if you're pressing your music to vinyl, because our music's being mixed for commercial use on television. I think it's okay for me to master using television standard mastering software, but really you want to get your tracks mastered if you're releasing records and stuff. Okay, the playthrough and the tweaking is the last stage, and you could do this forever and you'll never be happy with it, and I'll probably listen to this track after and think that the first mix was better, but that's it really in a nutshell. And I hope you enjoyed. So yeah, I'm going to do the playthrough now. One thing I've just forgotten is to add reverbs. I wouldn't really add a lot of reverb to something like this because it's a synthwave track. I mean, you would use reverb on dreamy synthwave tracks, but with the style of this specific track, I wouldn't go too mad. But you might want to add reverb to things like the leads and strings and maybe a little bit of the snare, things just to open it up and put it in that 3D space, and delay as well. I'm not going to go too mad, but I'm going to just do a playthrough and just tweak the reverbs and tweak the levels in general so you can hear the final song. Thanks for watching. You can download the Logic default template that I used for this. You can also download this Logic session with everything as it is right now and the audio stems. You should be able to play around and experiment, and you're welcome to try what you want with the track, and see if you can do a better job than me, because that I'll probably listen to this song later and think that it was awful. Thanks.